Excuse me for a second. And after he got over his apoplexy, he said, well, President, what was your first day in office like? Who was your first person that you interviewed? He said it was Henry Kissinger. He had another fit. He said, what was Henry Kissinger doing here? He doesn't even speak Spanish. You know, he was disgusted. He knew about Henry Kissinger's reputation as a leftist, who, you know, against the globalists that we should be against as well. And President Aznar said to him something just classic. He was explaining to me how the world works. I'll bet he was. Well, that tells you something about conspiracy. Now here's another one. This happened in February of this year, and this is proof. This happened the second day of the 45th Munich Conspiracy Conference on Security Policy at the Hotel Bayerischer Hof in Germany. The day previous, they had given an award, this is a NATO organization, to Henry Kissinger for all of the work that he'd been done. The next day, a speech by James L. Jones. He's the National Security Advisor of Barack Obama. Used to be the head general in charge of NATO. He's a globalist. He said these words, "Thank you for that wonderful tribute to Henry Kissinger yesterday. Congratulations. As the most recent National Security Advisor of the United States, I take my daily marching orders from Dr. Kissinger, filtered down through General Brent Scowcroft and Sandy Berger, who is here. We have a chain of command in the National Security Council that exists today." He just admitted openly of a conspiracy. This is proof. Why? Because James L. Jones is a duly authorized official of the United States government working at the highest levels of the White House. The NSA advisor is normally the handler of a president. Presidents are always puppets. They need a handler. The only exception was during George W. Bush's regime. It wasn't Condoleezza Rice, the National Security Advisor, that was the handler. It was President Richard Cheney. And that's why Richard Cheney's staff grew from the normal vice president's staff of about a dozen people to 600 in every office of the United States government, because he was running things. Now, how do I know this proves conspiracy? First of all, he didn't say, I take counsel occasionally from Mr. Kissinger. He said, I take my daily marching orders from Dr. Kissinger, filtered down through Brent Scowcroft and Sandy Berger. Those work for Dr. Kissinger. That means that someone who has no viable right to even be in the White House without an invitation is telephoning and giving daily orders to the NSA about how to proceed with directing the President of the United States. Now that is the definition of a conspiracy, is when you have two separate, non-viable or non-legal organizations colluding with one another for a purpose. It matches the decision. We now have proof. And where does this come from? Right there, Council on Foreign Relations. Go to their website, click on the speech of James. It's still there today. I'm surprised, frankly. They must be very confident that we cannot be overthrown because they haven't hid this. His hand should have been slapped royally for making this kind of a statement. But it's right there on the Council on Foreign Relations website. Now, you need to understand a little bit of how a conspiracy works. There's a core of directors and masterminds that is very small, and we don't know who they are. I have my suspicions. I won't go through the list today and how I know that. But there's a second level of people like the Kissingers who are most visible, and they have teams A, B, and sometimes C as necessary to take opposing appearing positions, so that they have a team aligned with the Democrats, they have a team aligned with the Republicans, and so Zbigniew Brzezinski was working with the Obama regime and playing like he was against those in the Bush administration, but they're all part of the same team, and they eventually give you the same program. And this is what Carroll Quigley, for example, said in his book, Tragedy and Hope. He said the national parties and their presidential candidate, and Carroll Quigley was a globalist. he was allowed to see their papers. My uncle covered this. His book, The Naked Capitalist, was about a review of Carroll Quigley's admissions. I've seen their papers. I approve of what the conspiracy does. My only criticism is that they aren't open and public about it. But here's what he said about how they handle political parties. The national parties and their presidential candidates, with the Eastern establishment assiduously fostering the process from behind the scenes, this is admission of conspiracy, moved closer together and nearly met in the center with almost identical candidates and platforms, although the process was concealed as much as possible by the revival of obsolescent war, meaningless war cries and slogans often about patriotism. The argument that the two parties should represent opposing ideals and policies is a foolish ideal accepting only to the doctrinaire and academic thinkers. Instead, the two parties are almost identical, so that the American people can throw the rascals out at any election without leading to any profound or extreme shifts in policy. Either party in office becomes in time corrupt, tired, unenterprising, and vigorless. Then it should be possible to replace it every 4 years, if necessary, by the other party, which will be none of these things, but will pursue with new vigor approximately the same basic policy you got before. Now there's a conspiracy telling clear back in the 70s what they were planning to do, and that's exactly what we've got. Even Barack Obama, the champion of change, has done nothing to change the interventionist globalist policy of George Bush. I've covered that in my World Affairs brief almost regularly about why that doesn't happen. So much for change. And of course you know that. But the American people have trouble. Even the Obama supporters have trouble believing, although some of them are starting to come to the conclusion there isn't a change. But they use the Hegelian dialectic of creating conflict and controlling that conflict by controlling both appearances of the opposition. You notice on television, first of all, the Jim Lehrer news hour is a perfect example of public propaganda. You first state the government position. You know, the government announced this and this and this today. Then they have, from an alternative point of view, we have somebody from the Council on Foreign Relations here who's going to give us an alternative, and he gives a little bit different point of view. But it's all down the same. It's not about challenging the policy direction itself, is it? It's not about saying the whole policy is a fraud. It's about saying, well, we should do this a little differently, we should do this, and so that's how they make the people think that they're getting both sides of the story. Now, there was a tremendous amount of manipulation, which is another proof of conspiracy that took place in this last election, mostly by Ron Paul, because of the presence of Ron Paul, and for the presence of Rudolph Giuliani. Now, Rudolph Giuliani was put forth by the establishment as the candidate, right? You remember seeing that. Got his face on Time magazine, Time of the Year. I knew and wrote in my World Affairs brief, they're preparing him for a presidential run. I knew that because they put him on the cover of Time. And sure enough, all the papers said Rudy Giuliani is everybody's Republican choice. America's mayor, America's hero. But he had almost no support, even among mainstream Republicans, because he was a cross-dresser. He had all kinds of things with Bernie Carrick and the sleaze about New York, and the rumors, of course, about him knowing about 9/11 and you know, allowing the Building 47, where his bunker was to be collapsed, and telling his people to get out in time to avoid that, but not telling anyone in the towers. The firefighters in New York hate Rudolph Giuliani because they know that he warned his people in his own bunker to get out of Building 47, which was filled with explosives and coming down, but refused to tell the firefighters in the World Trade Center to get out in time. And so they hate him, at least the ones that know, which is the majority.